So hi everyone, and thank you all for coming along today. As said, I'm Jason Harwood from Halfbrick Studios. I'm a producer there and have worked on quite a few titles. A little bit about Halfbrick Studios. So established in 2001 by 6 graduate students, and now we're currently at current headcount is 81, with studios in Sydney, Spain, USA, Adelaide, and Brisbane, obviously. Well, if you got the main one. So yeah, there's a lot going on with Halfbrick. We've had quite a lot of success since Fruit Ninja and a lot of expansion through the company. We originally, a lot of our expertise started on Game Boy Advance games, Nintendo DS, PSP, all the handheld platforms, and we created quite a few games on those platforms for about 9 years before we moved into iOS. And so those, particularly working for Nintendo, really helped us as a company be great at making family-friendly games. So that's just a little bit about the history of the company. I'm going to breeze through these first couple of slides a bit before I move into actually about Scrum. Personal history, so these are the games that I've been the producer on since I've been at Halfbrick since 2009. So Fish Out of Water, Jetpack Joyride, Fruit Ninja, Band Stars, there's another one's coming out really shortly, and from PSP, DS and whatnot. Before I go too far too, can I just get a show of hands who actually uses Scrum or has used Scrum? Okay, cool. I'm just making sure I'm not, because this is pretty much the same talk that I did for the Scrum Alliance gathering down in Sydney, which is everyone's into Scrum, you know. So I just don't want to make sure everyone's got some idea what I'm talking about when I get there. Okay, Halfbrick. So my role at Halfbrick, yes, I'm a producer and Scrum Master, which is pretty much the same thing these days. I'm also a product owner. You know, what's the difference? Same job, you know, I do the same thing. These days I'm looking after Jetpack Joyride. I'm a product owner of Jetpack Joyride. But basically my main stuff is about making sure the team can get the job done. I help them get organised, and I'm very much really big on removing impediments that get in their way. You know, computers running slow, whatever's happening, having problems at home. My job is to make their life a bit easier. And very much about getting them organised. So that's what I do. Buffer external noise, so I deal with a lot of any publishers or stuff that we've worked with in the past. I would be that guy talking to them and leave the team to work on the game. You know, people just walking in and interrupting the team. My job is to really crash tackle them before they get into our area. That's pretty good. Look after stuff like translations, third-party game development. I've run quite a couple of external teams to the studio as well, and help them get organised and meet the Halfbrick standards and make games that as if a team within Halfbrick Studios had made it. And industry conferences, so they fly me around the world a little bit, which is awesome. And and like I said, executive producer on a few external games. So the main team I look after is the Ninja Pack. So the Ninja Pack is the team responsible for all those titles before: Jetpack Joyride, Fruit Ninja, Monster Dash, Fish Out of Water. Our bread and butter money, the stuff that's been very successful within the studio. So what's really interesting about this team though is that it's actually a 7-man team. But that 7-man team is split up into 2 3-man teams, and me in the middle, basically managing those guys. I'm not the lead of the team, I'm merely the organiser. I'm the guy who just cracks the whip when they're not doing the right thing, when there's problems, and like I said, all the impediments and whatnot. So I facilitate them both, and the general structure is that one team will work on updates for an existing game like Jetpack Joyride. The other team will work on prototyping a new IP, and if it gets green lit, off we go. They'll go into full production. So we work really small, really light and really agile. 3-man teams is 1 artist, 1 coder, 1 designer. That's it. We trim all the fat. We find that for us, for mobile games, that works really well. It means that our process, we're not getting bogged down in big meetings that are taking forever and working out who's doing what. It's all about keeping it really lean and agile. And that's what I really believe in when it comes to game development, is keeping things moving along really fast. And you know, if something's not working, we can move and we just dump it and move on to something new that is. Okay, so the team that works on updates is really easy to manage because they're just updating it. We know what the work is. It's predefined. And, say it's Jetpack Joyride. It might be to create 2 new jetpacks and a couple of costumes. So we know how much effort that work's going to take. We've done that all before, and so it's really about breaking down the tasks for them, setting them off and go. However, but when it comes to prototyping, it's a whole different kettle of fish. So prototyping is, we have this philosophy is fail fast and fail often. So the idea is, if you've got a game and you're prototyping it and it's shit, throw it away. Throw it away before you go into mass production. You spend a couple $100,000 on making it. Oh, that guy's in trouble. Okay, but they're really hard to manage too, you know. So what we can set out a plan for 6 weeks, but we might only get a week into that plan and throw it away. So it's really agile. It's really light and lean, you know. So it's always about nearly down to day by day with a general goal of where we're going with the prototypes. Because the last thing we want to do with prototypes is hamstring it, right? We don't want to make it heavy with processes and rules and regulations, because how are you going to make the game? How are you going to come up with that thing if it's all about, I need this done by here, you know, like sometimes it takes a little bit of time to find the fun. So that's what it's about. So work for hire. So Halfbrick spent the first 9 years working for hire for publishers like Activision and THQ, and you know, that's all fine. It was really good for us. There's a lot of reasons why we did that. It's about establishing a reputation within the industry of making good games, making good contacts, getting out there, and generally just getting our own chops together, you know, being able to make good games. And if we could do that at a quality that satisfied companies like Nintendo and Microsoft and Sony, you know, you got something within the studio. And if you've got the engine, your own internal engine that we've been working on over the last X amount of years, you also know that's up to snuff as well. So it all really helped us just generally build a strong reputation as a good, you know, high quality games developer. And that's why we did that. And I mentioned before about the company focus on handheld platforms that were family friendly. Like making a game for Nintendo, it's family friendly. You don't make hardcore games for Nintendo, right? Particularly on GBA. So but that really stood us in good stead for when it came to iPhone and Android, because the games are, that audience is the most casual audience ever. There is no more casual audience than iPhone, right? It's everyone. It's 4-year-old kids to your grandmother and everyone in between. Women are playing in droves like never before. Guys, you know, it seems to be attracting, you know, mid-core players away from console because they're getting their fix on their mobile, you know. So it's a super diverse audience, and we found that making games with that idea and focus, that if, you know, we still keep that. Like we're actually starting up a new game as of today, and one of the comments that come out was about it being a G3 to G8 rated game. You know, we're not trying to make it hardcore. We're not trying to appeal to a niche audience. It's about trying to appeal to everyone, and that's super challenging, right? But that history really helped us get there now. We have that same philosophy. It's kind of like it's ingrained with us about we're just making Nintendo games. You know, they're family friendly. Difference between working for hire and working on our own games, it's everything. You know, it's so much more fun to work on your own vision and your own goals. Yeah, it's way more fun, and you don't have to. You know, it's not about deadlines and budgets anymore. You know, it's about making cool games. There's some of the licensed titles we've worked on over the past. Plenty of those. Okay, so I'm just sort of building up a bit of history here, where we've come from, and how Scrum all fits into this. I just want you all to have a bit of a history and where we've come from, what we're doing. So our first crack into the releasing our own IP games was that it was a complete failure. We nearly shut the door, so it was so bad. So we did 4 games on a PlayStation Portable, PSP Minis they were, Blast Off, Rocket Racing, Age of Zombies, and Echoes. And so it was so bad that, and it wasn't so much that the games were bad, it was that the platform was extremely hard to make money off and be successful with. So we've actually got, Age of Zombies got Game of the Year in 2009, the year we released it. Here you start counting the money, you know. It failed. It didn't make its money back. The other 3 did worse than that. You know, and there was a lot of reasons for that, but the big one, what we sort of come down to is that the barriers for entry. And I've got this other philosophy. I'm a bit of a philosopher, you'll probably get that tonight, right? So, I've got this theory that for every barrier to entry you put in front of your players, you're going to lose about half of them. Now, it's not hard and fast, but I think it's a pretty fair rule of thumb. So say if there was 10 million people who had PlayStation Portables out there, right? And you wanted to download a PSP mini game. Well, first you had to have a Wi-Fi connection. So your 10 million's gone down to 5 million. You had to have a Wi-Fi connection to download the game. You had to have a PSN account, down to 2.5. You had to have a credit card hooked up to it. Then 1.25 million. And it doesn't take long, a few more steps, and then the person actually has to find the game, they have to appeal to them, and then they actually have to make a decision to buy it. So I worked it out the other day, that 10 million audience gets down to about 70,000 people, maximum potential. So those barriers to entry are super important. And so these days, it's a big reason why freemium games are doing so well, is that last barrier to entry is gone. It costs you nothing to download it, it's free. And in fact, Apple recently announced at the WWDC conference this year that of their 575 million active customers, they've got more people hooked up with active credit cards than any other online store in the world. One click away from making a buy from all your in-app purchases. That didn't exist for PlayStation Portable. We literally had about 7 barriers to entry for every customer. Anyway, so essentially by December 2009, it was make or break time for us because we lost a lot of money on making those 4 games. And so, on April 20th, 4 months after that, we come up with Fruit Ninja version 1.0. So it came from a simple prototype that was created during the Halfbrick Friday initiatives. I think I've got a slide on the Halfbrick Friday stuff, so I'll talk about that briefly too. But we released version 1.0 in just 7 weeks. It was a 3-man team, 7 weeks, we pumped it out. Okay, but it was about, all we released was the classic mode. It was 1 game mode, no social features, no in-app purchases, 1 game mode. And we were literally just throwing it out there to see if it would work. This was also only 2 years after the App Store had pretty much been available. So, we got lucky, it cost us 40 grand to make, and we had our initial goal of selling 100,000 copies. We'd double our money, good investment, great, move on. What actually happened was that within about 2 weeks we'd hit that goal. It was under 2 weeks we'd hit that goal. And we kind of were left scratching our heads going, holy shit. and before we knew it, the phone's ringing hot. Microsoft wanted it on the Windows Phone 7, Nokia wants it on every phone, Android wants it on their phones, and it goes on. And we were barely ready to get the game on iPhone, and so it basically took us, over the next couple of years we were working on Fruit Ninja and a few other games at the same time, but it's now available on 22 different SKUs on virtually every smartphone, tablet, Xbox, PlayStation, not on the Wii. It's about the only thing it's not on. It should be, right? We're just overworking with Nintendo. We've done our time with those guys. So they're hard. Nintendo are hard. Don't you worry. They're brutal. Anyway, so it's been purchased over 30 million times and downloaded over 300 million times in total. So it's kind of how that all came about. But 7 weeks, right? 7 weeks is a really short time to make a game. And this is why I want to talk about Scrum. I am getting to my point, which is about Scrum. I just want to give you some history here. All the titles we've been working on. Okay, Scrum, yay, get there. Okay, so like most producers that end up in this role, you're not really trained to be a producer. Right? You just kind of you look like the oldest guy in the team. You could be the producer. Trust me, that's what happened. So what we did, we do a lot of training in house. So it's very much you're not just thrown to the walls and produce, make it happen. So there is an element of training that goes on, and it's generally through reading books and self-education. So it was only after being a Scrum Master / producer for the last 4 years. We finally did a certified Scrum Master course just this year, so that was kind of interesting. I don't know how it helped me after 4 years of actually doing the job, I guess, but it helped a little bit, I guess. You always get something out of all these things. But Scrum is driven from the top down within the studio. So our boss, Chanel, for those who have met him, Chanel Dio, he is a big evangelist of Scrum. And it's a belief of his that all teams, well, it's not a belief, it's a mandate, all teams use Scrum, basically. So he helps really drive that and educate all the producers. We've got a series of books to read, and we're expected to read them all and get through it. But we also do a lot of other things too. So we have all the producers meet up once a week. We'll talk about what's going on with each other's teams, and generally have our Scrum of Scrums. But also, we always set a weekly task for ourselves too, which might be a reading. Something that someone's read recently about Scrum that's relevant or interesting, and share it. It sort of helps us all get through things a bit better. And Yeah, so I mentioned before about, Scrum really suits these long development cycles, and that's what we've been used to. Like this team, the Ninja Pack, we've been doing, like Marvel Superhero Squad took us 12 months, and then Rocket Racing after that took us 9 months, and then moving on to Fruit Ninja took us 7 weeks. It took some adaptation for us to be able to do that, right? And so Scrum over those long periods is super simple. Well, not simple, but it's not difficult. This much work to do, this is what we normally do in this much time, let's get it done, okay? But in 7 weeks, it's kind of, let's throw the rule book out and let's just start again, right? Okay, so the transition. So, yep, it's taken 12 and 18 months to do games previously. We've done by the book versions of Scrum. I'm sort of repeating myself a little bit here. Let's look at what we did differently. Let's do that. Okay, so for rapid prototyping, I should just say too, I haven't given this talk for a little while, so I'm a bit rusty on my talk. So bear with me. Okay, so generally at the start when we're prototyping, what we don't do is worry about how pretty it looks. We're really big on making something ugly. If we can make something ugly that's fun, we got something. Because when we make it pretty, it's going to be even more fun. When we add audio, it's going to be crazy fun. It's kind of the way it works. But removing the idea of trying to make a prototype pretty is super important. It should be ugly. Ugly as anything. Uglier the better, I say. Because if you make ugly game fun, you got something. Like I mentioned before about our fail fast and fail often approach. So I hope this Halfbrick Friday slide is in here because it's kind of important. So Halfbrick Friday, I'm going to talk about it because I've got a feeling it's not. Halfbrick Friday started when we were making once every fortnight on Fridays. We would stop production as a company and start work. You would pitch games to each other. You know, hey, I've got an idea. Everyone's got an idea who walks into a game studio. They all think they've got the next big thing, and no exception at Halfbrick. We all think we've got the next big game. So, and it goes from everyone, coders to artists to QA guys. Everyone thinks they got that. So Halfbrick Friday is about that, giving everyone the opportunity to get it out, pitch it, and make it, right? So we'll get up, we'll pitch. You don't have to pitch, but if you've got an idea, get up, you're encouraged to do it. And so what we do is then we'll form teams, informal teams throughout the company. So, and we're encouraged to not work with the guys that you normally work with on a day-to-day basis. It helps that cross-pollination, getting to know the people in the studio a lot better. It makes a lot of sense, right? And you get to find out what the skills and talents are of the other people in the studio that you wouldn't normally work with on a day-to-day basis. So we'll get together for a week. Well, it started off every fortnight. We'd get together, spend a day on it every fortnight, and over about a month or two, we'd come up with a prototype. It kind of didn't work so well because, after every fortnight's really disjointed. It takes about half a day to get everyone back in the right headspace of where we were and trying to get things done, and then it's lunchtime, and it just didn't work. So we changed that from fortnightly to actually having week blocks, right? And so one of the things the best time we found to do it was the last week of the year, or the first week of the year back. What it means it's a full week of nothing but making new games, and it's making ugly prototypes. And what we found from that is we're getting, the last round we had 24 games pitched, we had 17 prototypes made, so 7 of them were terrible ideas, but 17 were good ideas, and they went in and we made prototypes out of them. And then out of those 17 games, we've got 3 games that we think are going to actually fly, and we'll see full production. 14, the other 14, they'll end up on the shelf. Someone might come up with something from them later on down the track. There might be some tech that someone did in one of those prototypes that's actually, I could use that in this other thing I'm doing over here. You never lose by doing that. It's a bit of an upfront cost, but there's a lot to be gained by doing it too. And more so, nothing more so than the employee satisfaction of actually making that game that they've been thinking about and been plaguing their head forever. And they're not spending their nights at home staying up to midnight trying to make it, affecting their work the next day. Stuff's really important. I had to mention Halfbrick Fridays because it's awesome. And I encourage you all, if you can, to try it. Put a couple of days aside and knock out an ugly prototype. Who knows what you could come up with.
Do we just come in and see you with our idea on a Friday?
Yeah, knock on the door, I'm sure I'll answer.
White Pedal Studios is taking the application.
That's right. Indeed. Okay, so it's a really dynamic process with prototyping, and sometimes things are scrapped really quickly, so I'm sort of moving back to this. But Scrum is about managing change and allowing agility, but that was kind of like managing prototyping. Such a bad idea, you can't, like I said before, you can't you've got 2 weeks to make fun. It doesn't work. You know, like you kind of got that time limit there, but trying to sort of plan it out, we're going to do this, going to do that, going to do whatever, it kind of doesn't work. So, yeah, it's trying to like kind of manage the hurricane. So we kind of changed the rules a bit, and just getting back to Fruit Ninja now about this 7-week sprint that we did, right? Or this 7 week to make a game. It's actually 7 1-week sprints is what we did. So do you guys understand the concept of sprints? Yeah, a few nods, no too many confused looks. So a sprint is a time box, basically, for those who don't know. So we're going to, in 7 weeks, we would have 7 1-week time box sprints. So in each week, we're going to get X amount of work done. So the general concept of Scrum is that it's about estimating the amount of effort that it takes to do a task, and then sort of, what's the word? Comparing against that, I guess, or estimating against that. So for example, it might take, okay, so say we're going to put a button into a game, or a character. A character's good. So you're going to put a new character in the game, and the art, it's going to take about 2 days. So just get that prototype up and going, and then, or the main rig happening. It might not be finished, but we'll have a character that could animate. And then code might take a day to get it in. As a team, we decide, we sort of go, you know what, we're going to put a value on that, on how much effort that is. Right? The crux of Scrum is about effort. And we use these things called effort points. So say as a team we decide that's a fairly medium-sized task, and so we're going to assign a value to that of about 12 points. Right? So we know if it takes 12 points to make a character, then to do something like put a button in the UI is a very arbitrary task. It might only be a 1. Okay? So you start getting this comparison of values. But what you do get when you start putting all your tasks together is that say over a week, over a bit of history, and we had a team that had a lot of history of doing sprints together, and we knew over a week that how we estimated tasks, we might be able to do 60 points worth of work in a week, right? So what that means is that when you've got 7 weeks, you know you've only got about 7 weeks to get this out, you're only going to get about 420, here's my maths again, 7 6s are 42, you're going to get about 420 points worth of effort done, points worth of effort. So those time boxes are really important. So you've got these milestones. So every week, if you're doing 60 points, you know you're on track and you're going to get a product done in your 7 weeks. It's super ambitious, and we worked our asses off to make that happen, but we made it happen. But it was also helps you really hone in on the scope of your title that you're trying to make. In 7 weeks, anything wasteful had to go. Anything that was too big or too scopy, it's just not going to happen. So we got fruit, slice, check. Yeah. Done. So it helped us really hone that down, but it also helped us make sure that the product that we made was excellent. So we do things also like conditions of satisfaction. And so for every task that we have a series of conditions of satisfaction. So for example, to slice a piece of fruit. So what we could have had is that the task is to slice a piece of fruit. The player can slice a piece of fruit. It's great. But what we do instead, our task is it feels awesome to slice a piece of fruit. So we start setting that standard of what it is that we're trying to achieve as a team. And then we'll go through all the tasks and break that down between art, code and design. But then the conditions of satisfaction will be so we'll actually try and cover everything. Say, right, it feels awesome to slice fruit. It feels like fruit gore is appearing on the screen, or fruit porn was the other word we used. But it feels gushy and gooey. These kind of word adjectives that kind of describe how it feels to play. And describes how it should be. When you're actually slicing that piece of fruit, it could have just been falling apart, no juice, no nothing, no sound effect, and technically it would work, right? But what makes it work is that it turns out it's kind of fun to slice fruit, and fruit's juicy and gooey, and you've got to embrace all those things. And so on our conditions of satisfaction, we made sure that those conditions reflect that. So again, get sidetracked, but I'll get back to where I was. But conditions of satisfaction are really important, and I just wanted to sort of go back to the 101 of Scrum stuff for those who don't know. So we did change the rules a bit, and what we did was for 7 weeks we couldn't treat it the same. Our sprints the same as if it were a full 12-month production cycle. We had to trim the fat. We had to really get down to what was important, what everyone needed to be able to do, and what they needed to know to be able to get the job done quickly without being meetingified all day. working out, planning what we're doing for 7 weeks, and spending 2 weeks planning what we're doing for 7 weeks. So what we found was if we had planned, with 7 1-week sprints planned, if we lost a full day in planning at the start of each day and a full day in retrospection and reviews at the end of a sprint, of the 35 total days available, we would have gone down to just 21 days. And that would be normal in a big 4-week sprint over a 12-month project. You'd spend a day planning and you spend a day at the end, winding down, or not winding down, but retrospectives and meetings and all your sprint reviews and that stuff. So we didn't have time for that. So we looked at changing a few of the following things as a series of experiments. So we moved away from a physical task wall. So one of the jobs as a producer used to be printing out every task for code art, design and production, putting them up on a bloody wall in the not started pile, and then everyone would move them across every day. And it was all great until someone changed what one of the tasks were. Then I'm back to the printer, printing stuff out and cutting down trees, it wasn't good. And so we just moved away from that completely and just did it all online on a bit of software called Trello, and I'll talk about Trello in a moment. We spent a lot less time planning. So instead of trying to plan out the next 7 weeks, we basically had a fair plan. We knew what we wanted to achieve. Like, we had very high level goals for the 7 weeks, but that 1 week, at the start of the week, we'd get in and knock it out and plan it out. And basically we got our sprint planning down, our team went down to about 15-20 minutes. We don't mess around, there's no long lengthy meetings. What do we need to do? Let's get it done. Yeah, planning out a week's worth of tasks isn't that hard. And also, I should also add the caveat that our team's experienced. We put out a lot of titles together, so I don't need to tell them how to make a button. And I don't need to tell them how to make a bloody character, we basically set up the main tasks, and I leave it up to my coders, artists and designers to create their own checklists within those tasks to manage that. And Scrum is about being a self-managing and a self-organising team. Not about me telling everyone what to do or producers running the show. The team owns the sprint. That's the most important thing with Scrum. The team owns it. They own what they commit to doing every week or every month or however long, and it's all about the team. It's not about me. It's not about producers. Producers got an easy job if you've got a good team who are organised and willing to self-manage. And we reduced a lot of time spent on the retrospectives and sprint reviews. Basically, so we always get stakeholders in on our sprint reviews, whether it's the boss. We tend to get our boss, our marketing manager, and our receptionist in. The boss has how much is this costing me approach. The marketing guy is how am I going to market this approach, and the receptionist is more, it's a pretty approach, and it's good. You need those kind of different perspectives on what it is that you're doing, because it can't be all business, it can't be all about marketing, and it can't be all about fun. It needs to be that combination of the three. So it's important to get external people in who aren't team members. You need to have that external perspective in on your games. But we still needed visibility into our sprint progress. So we still needed to see that we're on track. As a team, it's probably the most important thing the Scrum Master or producer does. It shows the team through some graph that we're on track, or we're not on track and we need to pull our finger in. So, okay, work. Okay, so moving away from physical task wall. So it's a bit hard to see in this picture, but basically that's our Scrum wall. It's just a massive wall of whiteboards. It's awesome. I'm in heaven with my whiteboards. So what we do, it's all about visibility. You have things like a calendar up there for the period of the month. What's happening? Who's away on leave? What's happening? Birthdays coming up. Anything important up on the calendar. We have our stand-up meetings around this every morning. This is where we all stand up and make our commitments every day. You guys all understand about commitments and getting up there as a team making commitments? Yeah, no. Okay, so briefly, 3 things we do, every team member does every day, is you get up there and we talk about what you said you were going to do yesterday and what you actually got done, what you're committing to actually getting done today, the word commitment being the key word there, and the last one is any impediments that you have along the way. So, and the point is that if I get up there and I make a commitment, so we're making Fruit Ninja, and I get up there and start making commitments about Jetpack Joyride, or hypothetically I'm one of the team members, the Scrum Master would pull me in the line and say, dude, we're not making Jetpack Joyride, we're on Fruit Ninja, you need to make some better commitments. It's about being a bit of visibility about what every team member is working on every day, and making sure we're all working on the right stuff, and we're all steering the ship in the same direction. And then anything you didn't get done isn't so much about creating a witch hunt and holding people really accountable for not getting stuff done. It's about trying to understand why and what the core reason is why things aren't getting done. And then any impediments, that's the Scrum Master's job, is to try and remove them. I spend half the day fighting my computer. My job, go and grab the IT guy, sort that shit out. That's what a Scrum Master does. Anyway, so we do things like have our burn down charts up there. I use a high-tech version of whiteboard markers and I draw my burn down charts because it's dead simple. It's great for communicating ideas. We'll get up there, as you do, smash out ideas, designers, artists, coders, those three different brains talking to one another. Whiteboards are great medium for those guys, used as shared space. And more importantly, I'm not spending time creating, editing and moving those individual tasks that I used to have to print out. I hated that. And then we use this piece of software called Trello. So Trello replaces our task board. And it's dead simple, highly recommended, free to use. Trello is how it's basically nothing more than a checklist manager. It's a task list manager. That's all it is. How you use it, we've had to manipulate it a little bit. But, so you can see the points, the 5 and 23, the 3 and 6, 13 and 13. They're our Scrum effort points, right? So there's a plugin you can get for Trello to do Scrum with Trello. It's dead easy, you just choose how many points it's worth, that task, and then you have a checklist. As you go through the checklist and you get things done, it counts your points up of how close you are to being done. So for example, the 5 of 23, we've got 5 points of a total 23 done on that list. So from there, I can work out in total how we're actually burning down, how many out of the total amount of points that we have, what our progress is on any given day. Like I said, the main thing is Trello works for us. It works for our team. It might not work for you. You might find something else. We used to use Excel spreadsheets, and we used to burn down by hours, and so every task would have an estimate of how many hours it would take, and just overcomplicated. All I need to know, really, at the end of the day, is how each task is getting done, how it's progressing. So for us, it's simple, intuitive, and most important thing is the guys love using it. So that's the right solution for me. We had a lot of resistance about using Trello. The rest of the company was using some other software, Scrumwise, I think it was. But you know what? I just said, but it works for us. Why would we change something that's working so simple? We're spending maybe 2 minutes a day on this thing, using it, just checking off where we're at end of the day. Probably takes about an hour to set up a sprint. Perfect. I can assign multiple people to each task. As you can see, there's a lot of heads on each task there. Calculate some burn downs. We can move tasks around. We can reprioritise everything. It's just dead simple. Highly recommend it. Less time planning. Okay, yes. So less time planning does not mean no planning. We still do a lot of planning. So we have the benefit of having an experienced team and a very strong, experienced team lead. So we've always got a strong vision and who is our product owner of the game, and that's kind of super important for this to work. So for a 4-week sprint, normally we'd lose a full day at start and end of each sprint, planning, reviewing. For 1-week sprints, we just had to scale that down. So, and it makes sense, right? Spend a day planning something that's going to happen for 4 weeks. Well, for 1 week, you're going to spend a quarter of a day at the most. We get it right now, I'm saying about 15 to 20 minutes. And we did things like we ceased estimating hours, the amount of effort, amount of time each task was going to take. Got to put a button in the game. The art for the button's going to take 2 hours, and the code's going to take this, and the design's going to take that, and then we plan. It's 15 minutes for that one, and Christ, it's just way too fine and intricate. We didn't need that level of detail. I didn't care if it took someone 15 minutes to implement a button. I cared that how much effort that took as a team more than anything. And again, the sprint was all the planning, the reviews, we just really hone them down. This is kind of a bit of a more of a high level concept if you do understand Scrum. For those who don't understand Scrum, just tune out for a moment. So the idea with Scrum, how I learn it, is that when you'd only receive the points that you estimated for a task. So it was a 10-point task. You'd only get those 10 points basically allocated as done when the task was done. signed off and done. So that kind of sucked because our burn down charts, rather than getting a nice sort of angled burn down, we're getting this big step kind of thing, and it didn't tell anyone anything. Like particularly because normally what happens on you come to Friday of your last day of the sprint, and you're up here somewhere, and the last day just burns down about 100 points. It's like it's crazy. So what we do is that we basically claim points of tasks that aren't completely done, and it's just for a percentage of. You know what? It's a 10-point task. We've done 5 of those tasks. We're claiming 5 of those points. It's not technically it's a bit of cheating as far as the Scrum, how we understood Scrum to be, but kind of found it since it's fine. More people are doing this than not. So it's just something I was getting a bit worried about, I guess, but it's all good. So what did we learn? So basically, as a team, we adapted Scrum, and mostly it's about managing prototyping, but we didn't do anything really all that differently. All we did was scale it down to suit our team at the end of the day. That was kind of what it's all about. And Scrum is about, it's all about this, like I said, it's all about the team. It's all about the team managing the process, getting shit done. It's not about the process. The process is just there to help you, and it's a framework. It's really easy to get hung up on, you read a 500-page book of Scrum, and you kind of come out with the conclusion that it's fairly complicated, but it's really not. It's just about being organised, and it's about getting people organised, and it's just a way of tracking how organised you are. And so I kind of encourage people to break the rules a little bit and find your own way with it. But finding a way that works for you and your team is the most important bit. So we'd already been, we were an experienced team, so it kind of helped us be confident of making these changes too. I wouldn't recommend this on day one. You kind of need to walk before you can run with Scrum. It helped us doing those harder projects that took 12 months, that as a team we kind of got what the whole thing was about. As a new team, that's kind of hard to just go, screw the rule book. They said it's fine to do whatever I want. Don't do that. So doing that certified Scrum Master course, I found out more teams are leaning towards our approach than what I anticipated, which is adapting things and keeping things nice and lean. And Scrum is about being agile, adapting to changing circumstances, making great software, good communication and teamwork. So nothing we did, and this is all part of the Agile Manifesto that was done by Ken Schwaber, the guy who invented Scrum. Nothing we did fell outside of that, at all. It's just about making it work for the team. One final slide. Okay, so one thing we do, and we found, this has got nothing to do with Scrum, by the way, but it's very much about looking after teams. So the big thing we found is that interruptions. Holy shit. The amount of times you would sit down and start working and coding, or someone would be reading your emails, doing whatever, getting work done, and someone would walk up to your desk and, hey dude, I need some help with this, or can you talk to me about this, or did you see the footy on the weekend, or da-da-da-da, without really thinking about you and the flow, or what you're doing. And it doesn't really matter. And we all do it, right? We're all guilty of, I need something now, I've got a problem, I'm going to go and see this guy because he can solve that problem for me. Now that guy might be bloody really busy doing something that's really mission critical for the company, and you're just kind of pulling them away on something that you need right now. So something we tried in the company was the cone of silence, and man, I got some resistance on this one too. So the cone of silence, I put in an email one day, everyone in the Ninja Pack will be off link, email, Skype, and you cannot walk into the room. It's actually such a cone of silence, they're not allowed to even talk to each other. That was the rules, right? That was the rules we as a team set, because we're all getting interrupted all the time. And we said it was from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. or 12:30, that first period of the day. That's it, 3.5 hours. Now, I thought I was doing a really great thing. We're increasing productivity, this should be great, I spent those 3.5 hours defending this whole thing to everyone else in the company, because they all thought that we were shutting ourselves off and we weren't being collaborative and we weren't doing this, we weren't doing that. That's fair points, I guess. Game development is a collaborative process. But what we found from it though was that for the first time ever, I had guys who would normally sleep in and get there at 9:01, completely unorganised for the day. They weren't allowed to talk to anyone for the next 3.5 hours. they had to get there and get organised. They had to do their talking and planning and working out. They were getting in there freaking out. Like, shit, can't talk to them for 3.5 hours, you know. So they'd get in there and they would plan like I had never seen them plan in their lives. It's like, it's crazy. And what was the most amazing thing out of it was at the end of the 3.5 hours where, and we did, you know, and I literally was crash tackling anyone who came near me, shot them with Nerf guns, whatever I did. Anyone who was making a beeline for our team, steered them away. That was my job, just to be gatekeeper for that time. What was really interesting at the end of it was that people taking their headphones off, because that was the only thing, just headphones on, lock yourself out, get stuff done. And our guys would turn to each other going, wow, that was crazy. 3.5 hours. And yet, they got so much out of it. An uninterrupted 3.5 hour period. You think about the last time you had an uninterrupted 3.5 hour period where people weren't just tapping on the shoulder willy-nilly and you checking your emails. That was the other thing. They weren't allowed to check their emails. Mate, it's amazing. We got more done in that time, and as a result, that rolled out throughout our whole company. Everyone does it now. We don't do it all the time, so anything hard and fast. Just when you need it, you need that time just to lock down and block the interruptions out. Do it. Put the email up. Just turn your email off. Turn off everything. Turn off your phone. Turn off everything. Just get stuff done. What you need to get done. Highly recommend it. I'll tell you what. The team love me for it. They love that. It's one of the greatest things. I read afterwards. We did a fair bit of research on this too about interrupted work and how it affects your day and how much it affects your production and getting stuff done. And one thing we read was that how much it's kind of like the greatest gift you can give an employee is just uninterrupted time. Particularly guys who love their job. Not so much for guys who hate their job, they hate that shit. But if you love your job, and we game developers tend to love it, right? That uninterrupted block of time is just a wonderful thing, and I can't recommend that enough. Summary. Kind of repeating everything I've already repeated, but basically we scaled down Scrum to suit the length of our sprints and deal with rapid change during prototyping and rapid development of small games. Being agile is exactly that. It's a team, the willingness not only embrace change, but actively look for areas that should be changed. There's no absolute right way to facilitate Scrum. What is important is that however you do it, is that your team buy into it and they use it and it works for them. And it took us a long time to get to there. You know, it took us 4 years before we actually believed in ourselves that, you know what, we can change this. It's not suiting us. It's too heavy. And finally, protect your team from distractions. They will love you for it. And, do that. It's such a simple one. It's such an easy win. That's about it. So happy to answer any questions that you have. I'll do the best I can.
You said at the beginning that sometimes you need to throw stuff away during the prototyping process, but then how do you deal with people that don't want to throw stuff away? Like they're really into what they pay, and how do you manage that harmony sort of?
No, there's no easy way to deal with that. You know, it's generally those things tend to glaringly stand out as they need to be thrown away, and if people aren't seeing that, they basically need to reevaluate what it is that they're making, what it is that they consider to be good enough, I guess, would be my answer. Yeah, I guess diplomacy is the best answer for that one. You know, just kind of trying to find that happy medium of ditching something that's clearly not working, and if someone's hanging on to it a bit too tight, I don't know, finding something else that might distract them.
Was it a majority vote to decide what's kept and what's thrown away?
No, generally it's, like I said, it generally is, it's glaringly obvious. It's kind of like making a new game. So from the prototype, for example, right, so we generally go to prototype stage, and then if it's really good, it'll go further, right? But if it's not like we all go, right, it's official, we're not working on this anymore. It's just, oh, that kind of didn't, yeah, it might work, we'll get back to that, and we'll get on to this other prototype we've been thinking of.
So you know, it's different levels of throwing it away.
Yeah, it's not like that big team decision. And put it this way, the team aren't funding the game. It's not their money. Yeah, it's very much at the CEO level, marketing level, where they come in and go, you know what, there's nothing we can do with this, or it's got potential. So it's pretty much decided for you, and more so, the game itself, so we put all the games we do on our Halfbrick Friday period, we put them up on our internal servers. Test flight, we've got a thing called Brick Flight, right? Everything's got a brick on it. All our tools are brick everything, right? So Brick Flight. But with that, so we can download every game that's been prototyped, and we always put just some basic analytics in them of just who's playing, how many people playing, how long they're playing for. Nothing much more than that. And what we see is the games that clearly everyone loves they just rise to the top, and it's obvious. People play them, and they keep coming back to them and playing them, even in that ugly, rough prototype stage. And it's more so when you know you have something more than when you don't. It would be the answer.
So if you have 7 weeks ahead of you, did you not do a big product burn down chart? Like you didn't do the big 7 weeks, does this whole scope in the 7 weeks? Did you just throw that out?
Yeah, no, we actually did. So we did have a prototype for Fruit Ninja, right? And I probably should have said that. So Fruit Ninja came from the Halfbrick Friday initiative. And so what we had was this ugly flashed prototype. It was terrible. But you could see the general concept of it. There was some form of splatter there. There was no audio. And it was really hard. It was one of those games you sort of had to squint at it and go, yeah, I kind of see it, yeah, And, but it's through having a great designer, artist, programmer, bringing that prototype to life, and a bit of belief from people like the CEO and marketing guys who did see the potential in it, where probably I actually didn't see the potential in Fruit Ninja in that prototype. Happy to admit that. But that's okay. It's all part of the process, is understanding and learning and seeing, finding that stuff that's still fun even in that ugly state, I guess. So what we did have was a vision, right? So the same designer he led that game into production, and it was his vision to, okay, this is how I can hack it together in Flash to sell that concept of it to everyone. But now let's go make the awesome version of that. So from that, we did have a fairly good idea of what it was we were trying to achieve, and that was one game mode, and I think we even had Open Faint in it at the start as well, but that was about it. That was the end of features, so it was very basic, but and the general idea was just to see. Before that, we'd put one other game on iPhone, which was a game we'd done previously on the PSP Minis, which was Blast Off, and we just put it up there to make sure our tech was working, we had the right tools in place, and we could actually get a game to iPhone with our engine. And once we did that, then Fruit Ninja was the first game we actually tried. And it was literally just to see, well, it's hard to tell if people are going to like slicing fruit on iPhone, and it just turns out they love it, So
did you say we have 7 weeks, let's fit as much as we can ahead of time?
Yeah, and our backlog went beyond that as well. So we did have a rough plan of where we wanted to go. But the big thing we actually did with that was after we released Fruit Ninja, the biggest thing we did was actually read every iTunes review written about it. Every single one. We collated them into what were the top feature requests that people were asking for, what they didn't like, what they did like, what was crazy, whatever it was. And it was, but what it did, actually we've got an interesting story about that too. I'll quickly go there, right? So the number one request of our feedback was they wanted to slice fruit more than once. They wanted to dice it up. It was really good, great. The only problem was we'd already prototyped that earlier too, and we knew it wouldn't work. Because to slice the fruit more than once, we had to slow down the speed of the fruit, and suddenly it didn't feel like gravity was affecting things properly, and it felt wrong. And for a game that's all about feel, gravity had to feel right. And so we're kind of this really tough decision but it wasn't just the number one feature, it was like 50 to 1 number one feature request. Well, how on earth are we going to deal with this? Because you don't get to talk to people, you just put your product out there, you put your update out. So, and number two, we looked at what was next, right? The next one was, everyone had bombs, and what was the other one? They just wanted a mode where they just wanted to take bombs away forever and just be able to slice fruit endlessly. It's like, that kind of doesn't work, We need a time box here. And so we come up with Zen mode. Zen mode has 90-second period, no bombs. And what we found was that the request for no bombs in the game went away pretty much, like 90% went. And so we put the update out, we read the reviews. And then, but what happened was, what was interesting is that the multi-slice request probably halved in that next update. It was they didn't go away, they were still clearly the number one feature request, but they reduced. It's okay, we're still not going to give you the multi-slice, but keep moving ahead. And after that, we released arcade mode and then the multiplayer mode. And by the time we got to arcade mode, the multi-slice request just went away. And so what we did, we ended up giving the customer what they didn't know they wanted, which was more variety in the game. And that was kind of, so that's kind of the trick, was listening to the feedback, but not directly reacting to the feedback, but sort of taking it into account and going, okay, we see what you're saying, but that's not what you want. This is what you really want over here. And luckily it worked. Yeah.
Is if you're a smaller team, say a team of one,
Yep.
can Scrum be implemented in your day-to-day, like some of the basic principles, or is it?
Yeah, to some degree, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't put it this way. I wouldn't. It doesn't hurt, like for us. The whole thing I was talking about with the estimating of the points. I'd do that. I'd totally do that because what we work out from that is more than anything we get this thing called a velocity. And velocity is just how many points you get through in a week. And what that does, it'll actually give you some. It's not accurate, right? Estimates are estimates. Like you might estimate a task to be it's a 10-point task, and it turns out to be a 100-point task. You way underestimate it. You live and you learn, right? Nothing you can do about it, but at least you know why you didn't meet yet, but you didn't burn down correctly because you underestimated something. But what it does do is that it gives you an estimate of when you're going to end, and when when you're going to have a shippable product. And so I'd say, yeah, totally, absolutely. I mean, but again, scale it down. There's probably no need for you to have a stand-up ceremony each morning and make your commitments to yourself. You might like to do that, but you know what I mean. Like, look at what's applicable, and I'd say the estimates and creating a burn down chart. Yeah,
Time boxing.
because if you work out, you know what? So at me, I get through 20 points worth of work a week. I've got 1,000 points of work to get through, but I don't have a year up my sleeve. Bring your scope back, look at what you can do. Helps you just refine what your minimum viable product is to get to the store. Up the back.
So maybe you said it before, but why 7 weeks? Who decided on that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure where that comes from either. Like it's just kind of how it worked. Mostly it was about trying to see if we could just get something out very quickly. What happened, right? Before that, we had those 4 games that failed, and we probably burnt, let's say $500,000. I don't know how much we burnt, but it was too much money. But we just lost a lot of money. We didn't have any money. We've been doing work for hire all this time up to then. So the money we get from work for hire is enough to keep the lights on and keep people employed, but it's not great money.
So were you generally surprised by the reaction, or was it already obvious that this is actually fun? And,
we had no idea. We really had no. We knew we had something fun, but good enough to compete with Angry Birds kind of fun. Sorry?
No one was fighting for more time?
No, we weren't. We were really just trying to get it out there and get it on the store. It was about saying, we always try and answer a question, right? And this question was, is it fun do people like to slice fruit on iPhone? Because that's the kind of thing, we could have kept going for another 6 months or 12 months with that and spend $150,000, $250,000 getting it out. It turns out people hate that idea. We don't like slicing fruit, are you nuts? You don't. It was because it was such a weird concept of slicing fruit with your finger. It was kind of, we knew it was fun, but we didn't know how people would react to it. It was the truth.
Yeah, so I was just curious about the ugliness of the prototypes. Like, did you have any example of an ugly prototype?
I do.
It'd be really awesome to get an idea of just how ugly.
One sec. I do a prototype.
As someone who puts way too much effort on graphics, and
You need to stop doing that. Where is it? So this is, I actually just gave another presentation the other day. I'm sure it's in there. Okay, so that
Shift F5.
That is the Fruit Ninja prototype. That was actually pretty. It was actually pretty good. We spent way too much time on graphics. Way too much time. But as you see, everything's there in that game to sell that concept. It was used. What was really hard to get for people was that it was a PC demo, a flash demo, and you used a mouse. And it's like, I felt a bit unwieldy with a mouse, but the general, once you start thinking about that with a finger, it's like, that could be all right.
another thing, just with that. So with the Fruit Ninja thing, was it originally prototyped so you could slice arbitrarily, or was it just like if you sliced it, it would split in two? Because it just looks like an animation there, split it in two.
No, it was designed to split where your finger hit it, intersected the fruit.
Yeah, in the prototype stage. Or?
Yes. Oh, in the prototype stage, no, just
Yeah.
just bam, you know, like a designer made that, not a coder. You know, he couldn't work that shit out. He's like, oh, just fall apart. Yeah.
Question about moving forward in the new generation of systems. Like, I'm not talking about PS4 and the Xbox One. I'm talking about like Steambox and Uriah, that sort of thing. You're not worried about flooding the market of just heaps and heaps of games hitting the market. How are you going to get that cut through to the masses?
It's really good question. It's really hard. Put it this way, it's hard to ignore the fact the dominance that iOS and Android have at the moment on the market, and I have little doubt that they will go away someday. Someday. But today is not that day, right? Today it's iOS and Android day, you know, get on board. So the second part is how do you cut through the market? That's a much more difficult question to answer. So we got very lucky with Fruit Ninja. Fruit Ninja came out at a time when the competition was Doodle Jump, Angry Birds, Flight Control, and Plants vs Zombies. Good games, but there was a clear need for more good games. And I tell you something though, you look at the top 50 grossing games at the moment, right? So there's actually another talk I did just the other day in New Zealand GDC about games and the games industry. Of the top 50 grossing games, 44 of the top 50 grossing apps, right? Not just games, apps. 44 of those are freemium games. Sorry, 44 games. 42 of those games are freemiums. 42 games take up the top 50 grossing apps at the moment. The great news is about 36 of those are terrible. Oh, they're slot machine games, and they're games that are clones of their own game by the same company. Oh, this would work. We'll clone it again. We'll call it something else. Kabam! Yeah. No, so that was Kingdoms of Camelot and Battle for something north of Lord or whatever. But the point is that, and then I think there's of those 42 freemium games, I think 6 of those are slot machine games. And that's sad, right? But there's a good reason for that. One, people are wired to understand that slot machines, when you're winning on a slot machine, most designers kind of get that you pull a button and ding, 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 and we're wired to know that's a win and you're a winner. Even though there's no coin slide out of your phone, it makes you feel good. And it's about that, your brain understanding that it feels good to win. And the other bit is, with slot machine games, is that you can actually play in your home without the shame of being seen by your friends playing the pokies, right? And it's why they're there. But my thinking is that it's also a great opportunity for actually great games, because there's literally probably 5 or 6 of those 42 freemium games that are actually any good, that actually offer any form of gameplay.
Is it kind of hit and miss sort of thing? It's like you turn out games, go through the process of elimination, that works, let's go with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's games you'll make, and another rule of thumb I have, but back to my philosophical self, is that if you make a game that you like, you're probably making the wrong game. Yeah, it's true. Because we are gamers. I assume pretty much everyone here are gamers, right? And we like, a bit more hardcore, a bit more bloody high-end, great PCs, all that kind of stuff. That's not who we're making games for here. We're making games for mums. If you make a game that your 4-year-old kid likes, you got something right there. Get that to the market.
How do you manage the rapid prototyping stage?
Like the Halfbrick Friday process mostly, but also teams when they have time at the end of a development cycle, they finish a game, they finish all the updates. What are we working on next? We have the choice of looking. So our teams are autonomous in that we're responsible for our own budgets and being profitable and being accountable for what we do and don't do. And so if you look at all the Halfbrick Friday games that are available and go, I don't like any of those, you could prototype something else, but you're not making any money.
Typically, there's something for them to work on.
Yeah, there is always
There's not like a dry spell.
Like I'm saying, there's of the 17 games we just prototyped, 3 were winners. You know, they're not all going straight into production. There'll be 1 or 2 there waiting for a team to get quiet to pick one up.
Beyond prototyping, is there a formal market testing process like focus groups? Or?
Totally. Yeah.
So that goes beyond the prototype.
Yep.
We all like this.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the one. Like we always take it home to mums, dads, daughters, friends, cousins, aunties, uncles, whoever's available. One of the best things we ever did was bus stop testing with Fruit Ninja. We walked down to a bus stop in Kelvin Grove, where the uni is.
Yeah.
Look for people who are playing games on their smartphones. Go, hey, you got a minute? Have a look at this. And one of the things we found from that was with Fruit Ninja. So we had the first game that really had a slice mechanic in it, and but at the time all the games were touch or tilt input, and so you give them Fruit Ninja, and 100% of people went, "It's broken, dude. This game don't work." And I was doing all this testing, and I've gone back to the designer going, "Oh, why don't you put a tutorial in the game?" He's gone. So what we did, we detect after 3 taps, and this is something we learned from this, right? After 3 taps, if someone's doing that, we just draw this animation of a finger slicing across the screen. End tutorial. Yeah, and that's great. You know, like, that's great. I would never think of that. That's why we have designers. That's what they do. They sort of think like that. But that kind of stuff is invaluable. That's what playtesting's about: is working out those simple problems that stop people from enjoying your game, and then whether you even have something at all. No worries.
Do you have a way of feeding back the data from like trend analysis or like what's that thing that they embed in the app that sends you back real-time analytics? Yep. Yeah. Every game goes with analytics. Every game in the top 50, top 100, top 200 apps would have analytics in them. You've got to do it. Otherwise, you sort of kind of flying blind a little bit in terms of finding out. What you then try and answer with analytics is questions like, and analytics is about answering questions, right? They're not going to give you the direct answer, and they're not going to say, yeah, everyone's loving it, Jace. You know, it's not how it works. It's very much, but if you see people are still playing your game, like say 60% of your players are still playing your game after a week or after a month, man, you got something. You got retention. You got players who are coming back to your game. That's awesome. If you're finding that people are not conversely playing it once, and you've got less than 24-hour retention, then you've got a bit much, well, people don't like the game, or something's very early in the game throwing them out, or there's a crash, or there's something that's confusing, you know. So analytics are very good for answering questions. You just got to try and ask the right ones and get your analytics set up so that you're actually you're able to get some kind of answer and make you come up with the answer. But generally, analytics will help you sort of make those decisions. Because I guess John include a little bit about that, and I guess that gives you a place where you've got a problem, then you've got to figure out what's the solution. Totally. Yeah, all it does is tell you got a problem.
It doesn't take away creativity.
No.
I think it tells you how to make a game. It stops you informed questions. Yeah, it's really about sort of confirming suspicions is a good way to look at it. Yeah, and when you put your analytics in the game, it's kind of like, okay, I want to see if people get through the tutorial. What percentage of people get through my tutorial? And if you're getting 100%, bang, you've got something. That's great. But if you're getting like 10% through, there's something wrong with your tutorial somewhere, and you can probably tune it up a little bit more.
I'm sure it's a better question than me. I'm just really good at putting up my hand. I also did have a small question. That's how many teams do you have running at Halfbrick at any given time?
About 7 or 8.
8?
Yeah, thereabouts. Yeah. That was a terrible question.
I was just saying, that's amazing, but we probably, because Sean's going to talk, it's 6:45. Okay. You guys might stay a bit longer. So maybe 2 more questions.
Sure. Okay.
What do artists tend to do during the rapid prototyping stage? Because if it's like ugly mock-ups, that's mainly just coding script.
What do artists tend to do all the time is what I so artists are totally there, right? So artists will try and make an ugly prototype look as good as they can. Coders will tell them to stop it, but generally concept art is what we do with in that time. So we really don't want to spend time putting pretty assets in. It's just time consuming, particularly if you've just got a week to knock out a prototype. You're really just trying to get a product. So mostly it's about, okay, but imagine if this was your world, give me, sell me the concept of where we could take this character, or where we could do these backgrounds, and just really go down that path. Yeah, so we do keep them busy.
Last one.
It was obviously successful on phones. What about when you went to Connect? Was it?
We smashed it.
Yeah,
Smashed it. Yeah. It's
It was great fun.
Yeah, it is. It's actually regarded as one of the best Connect games. It's not the best. I think Dance Central is probably the best game in all fairness. I love that game. Terrible dancer, but it's a great game. Yeah, but their menu systems are fantastic, super intuitive. But what we did do with Connect, so I was actually one of the stakeholders on that game, and because I had a Connect at home, I had a son, I've got teenage girl cousins who come around all the time, and when we put Dance Central on in our house, man, I just got to get out of the way because man, it's on. All these young girls, they dance and their aunties dance and they all love dancing, and it's like they want to talk to me. They just want to come and use that Connect, right? But so what I really insisted on with Free Ninja Connect is that it was intuitive to use and it was simple and people could use the damn thing and it was fun and it felt as good as those sliding menus on Dance Central. You know, UI had to be that good. I don't think it was that good. It's a bit more sort of clunky, but it helps us set that benchmark. And yeah, but Free Ninja Connect was a massive success for us.
Do you think if you just made a Connect game straight up that it wouldn't have been as successful?
Yeah.
Going from iOS where everyone knew
the way it went was perfect because it was one of those things that Microsoft saw the iPhone game and went, that'll work perfectly with their Connect. But it went the other way, Apple wouldn't. Apple went, whatever, dude. It's already cloned. 10 other people already got free license games on here now. But yeah, so it was a great crossover, and Microsoft saw it, and they saw the potential in it. And we'd done a game called Rascals with Microsoft already before, so we had a really good relationship with them. So that helped us in terms of getting that foot in the door. And all of a sudden, again, I just throwing money at us. Dude, you gotta get it over here. Well, what do you need? You know, when Microsoft are doing that, you're in safe hands. And like, but mind you, it's still a pain in the ass to get anything on Connect and through the Xbox Live, through the achievements and everything. Certification, killer. But yes, yeah, it was very successful. Okay, I'll wrap it up and get off this stage because I'm taking too much time.
One comment I want to
Oh
add.
yeah, pretty good.
If anyone wants to learn more about Scrum, I highly recommend reading the Scrum Guide by the guys who invented it. There's two of them, Ken
Schwaber. There's also a new one, Kenny Schwaber. Oh, Kenny Schwaber. What was his name? It was at the conference.
Is that Ruben guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh God, email me. I've got my card here. I'll give you cards. There's a great Scrum book. It's called the Simple Scrum or something like that. It's a great book. Kenny Rubin.
Put it on the meetup.
Okay, I will. I definitely will. Yeah, highly recommended.
But even simpler than that, so you don't have to actually read a textbook if you don't want to. The actual guide by the guys who invented it is like a PDF document. You'll have it like read in an hour or two. So I'll put a link online to that.
Cool. Awesome. Okay.
Thanks again. And Jason's going to be here. He'll be here all night. So
I will.
So Sean sets up with the Optus Rift. If you guys want, there's some pizza, I think, still in the back, and some drinks. There's also drinks in the back fridge there, so by all means, have a quick break, grab a drink, and Sean will be set up.
How are we going with the video?
Yeah, good idea.
I'm kind of happy.
I know.